All right, today we're going to talk about cross sections. A cross section of a shape is, let's say, when you have a cylinder, if I were to cut off horizontal to the base or parallel to the base, the cross section is a circle, okay? So when I have a cylinder, this shape is a cylinder, and I cut parallel to the base, my cross section is a circle. What do you think is going to happen when I take a cylinder and I cut perpendicular to the base? So here's a cylinder, and if I cut perpendicular to the base, what do you think the shape of the cross section is going to be? Did you guess a rectangle? Yeah, the cross section, when you cut into a cylinder perpendicular to the base or vertically, the cross section is a rectangle. What do you think would happen if I took a cylinder and I cut at a diagonal? So like if I started up here and ended all the way down here. So let's try that. So when I do that, notice that the cross section is an oval, or sometimes called an ellipse. Same thing. So this is an oval shape or an ellipse. So three identical shapes, three cylinders. When I cut horizontally or parallel to the base, my cross sections are circles. When I cut vertically or perpendicular to the base, my cross sections are rectangles. And when I cut diagonally, my cross sections are ovals or ellipses. Okay, so I have some rectangular prisms, possibly cubish, not exactly 100% the shape of cubes, so we'll just call them rectangular prisms. It's very hard to make prisms out of Play-Doh when you want nice corners. But anyway, so let's talk about the cross section of, let's say, a rectangular prism. What do you think the cross section is going to be when I cut it, or if we call this a square prism, rectangular prism, it doesn't matter. When I cut parallel to the base or horizontally, what do you think the cross section is going to be? Yeah, it's probably going to be the same shape as the base, either that square or rectangular shape. So let's cut that, and we see that yes, the cross section from a rectangular prism or a square prism, when I cut it horizontal to the base, it's going to be the same shape as the base. What do you think is going to happen when I cut it vertically or perpendicular? Yeah, it's going to be the same as this face. What about if I said I wanted you to cut this in such a way that you were able to have a cross section that was a triangle? How would you do that? So a triangle has three sides, right? So we're going to have to cut it in such a way that we just touch three sides of our shape. So do you see how I'm doing that? So the cross section, when I cut it diagonally, so look at what I've done to this cube. It was originally sitting right here, and I cut it diagonally, but I just cut so that I was actually touching three of the six sides of this prism, and so I was able to cut off a triangle. So cross sections are really cool because you get a cross section. When you cut a cross section, you take a 3D shape or a solid, and you cut off in such a way that you create a 2D shape, which would be like this is just two-dimensional, this cross section, this rectangular shape or this square shape or this triangle. So do you think there's any way that we can cut this and make, I don't know, let's cut it diagonally. Let's cut it from corner to corner, and you tell me what you think that shape is going to be. From the top corner to the bottom, opposite corner. I think that it's actually just going to be a rectangle. And when I cut it, I mean, it's not perfect because I did a little bit of squeezing, but you'll see it is a rectangle. I have one more shape I'm going to make for you, and we'll discuss that cross section. So hang on. So the last shape that we're going to talk about is a square. Square because the base is a square. Pretend this is a square base. A square pyramid. So if I were to cut horizontally to the base, what do you think that shape would be? Go ahead, just say it if you think you know it. Anyone?
Square?
Yeah, that's right. It would be a square. Okay. And so when I cut that cross section, I did a little bit of squeezing on this, but it really is a square. Okay. So this is parallel to the base. What do you think is going to happen when I cut it vertically? What do you think will happen when I cut it vertically? Anyone?
Triangle?
Yeah, this will make a triangle. Okay. All right, I'm going to squeeze that back together. What do you think would happen, or what if I asked you to cut this in such a way that you came out with your cross section was actually an isosceles trapezoid? So what is an isosceles trapezoid? Remember that an isosceles trapezoid is a trapezoid that has the sides, known as the legs, congruent to one another. So the sides or the legs are congruent to one another. So let's see if we can cut this in such a way that we can make an isosceles trapezoid. So when I'm done, the cross section, you can't really see it so much on the large shape, but you can definitely see it on the small shape. The cross section is an isosceles trapezoid. Remember, a trapezoid has a pair of parallel bases. This top is parallel to the bottom, and then the legs are congruent to one another. So that's your video on cross sections.